Welcome to Talking with Tech. I'm your host, Rachel Madel, joined as always by Chris Bugay. Hey, Chris.
How's it going, Rachel?
It's good. What you got for me this week?
All right, here's what I got. I got a question for you.
Ooh.
So something I don't know that we've talked about, or if we talked about it, I forgot about it. So I just wanted to bring it back up is, what was your first job? Like back when, there was teenage Rachel and she got her job. What was it?
So it depends. My first legitimate job was a grocery store, but I was nannying when I was way too young. It feels like I needed a babysitter, but I was, of course, in charge of other kids. So I started nannying really young. But my first official job where I signed paperwork was at a grocery store bagging groceries. And it was literally walking distance to my house because I was not 16 yet. I think I was 15. And I would walk there and I would bag groceries.
And then what, like after that, did you work when you were in college and stuff like that?
Yes, I've always worked, probably multiple jobs at a time. I did a lot of nannying. I was a lifeguard. That's a whole nother story. It's a funny one. What else?
Well, that's what we do. Tell me, wait, I want to hear this lifeguard story.
Oh, it was just crazy. It was this like whirlwind certification. It was a weekend training. And I feel like I was not set up for success. I didn't have a one-piece swimsuit, which is what they required. And I didn't realize they required that. I had a very sporty two-piece. It wasn't like I was wearing like a string bikini, but they didn't care. They were like, no, you need to wear, so I had to wear somebody else's bathing suit, which was really gross. And then I also am a strong swimmer, but I didn't know the specific strokes. So they had to have somebody teach me the specific strokes because the first step is you just have to go in a pool and swim 50 laps in an Olympic-sized swimming pool to show that you are a strong enough swimmer. Then you have to tread water in the deep end, which I did fine with. But it was just like, it felt like I was just failing across the board. Ironically, I ended up passing and I became a lifeguard. But I always think back on that and think, wow, like I really wasn't prepared adequately for that weekend certification training.
I actually went through a certification training for being a lifeguard too. I was on the swim team, and then I never got a job as a lifeguard for whatever reason. I just went through it, and then just because I had other jobs. But okay, so then after that, after a lifeguard, what else? Pre-speech therapy days?
Let's see. I mean, I did a lot of working with kids, which I think makes sense, right? Because now I work with kids. So I did a lot of nannying. I coached Pee Wee soccer, which is so funny because I ended up becoming the director of a huge Pee Wee soccer program. And all of like the dads would come up and be like, so where'd you play in college? And I never played soccer. That's the kicker was that I never played competitively at all. We didn't have a soccer team growing up. It was only for the boys. We didn't have a girls soccer team. And so I played field hockey. And so I did that for a long time. I worked as a hostess at a really fancy Greek restaurant in Philly. I think that's it. Although I'm sure there's other things that I'm missing.
So back in my day, my first job was working at a vet clinic, that's in a small town, farm town vet clinic. And then, I did, we had a drive-through convenience store. So I worked there for a while. And then in college, I got a job working at a movie theater, which was awesome. One of the reasons I want to bring this up was because there was a story that happened at one of the movie theaters that is relating to my experiences with working with people in the coaching and the training capacity of AAC. Back in the day when I was the assistant manager at this movie theater, and I was the one in charge of ordering like the inventory, so candy and cups and lids and all that kind of stuff, right? The bags, I had to order it to make sure it was there for all the customers. And for whatever reason, the company was out of medium lids. I mean, I had tried to order them, they didn't come in the shipment, and we were out. And I remember one time I was behind the counter and this woman came up to me and she said, I wanted, a medium Coke or Pepsi or whatever it was. And I poured for her and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm out of lids. And she went off on me. You expect me to go into the movie theater and I could trip and fall and spill this on me because you don't have lids. And I was sitting there and she just railed into me. I want to talk to the manager. Well, I am the manager. I'm sorry. I don't have it. The shipment didn't come in. There's nothing I can do. I think she was looking to get like a free upgrade or something. I don't know. I don't even remember. Who cares? But the point is what happens is, so she walks away all angry. I'm all down and upset. And my colleague comes over to me and he said, Chris, forget her. He used a more expletive,
Yeah.
But he's like, forget her. He goes, you get paid the same amount whether you have medium lids or not. And that phrase, there's so many things that I've learned over the years in those early year jobs, which is why I wanted to ask you about your early jobs. There's so many life lessons you learn in those early jobs. And this was one of them. And here it is too, just to make sure I'm being explicitly clear about what I'm saying. My colleague is wrong, right? Like, it's important to care that there's no medium lids. Like, I should have been like, man, like my feeling, I think that there was no medium lids. Wasn't my fault. There was nothing I could have done about it. But that customer should have been, I should have done something to try and make them happy, and yet there's this attitude out there that I get paid the same amount whether the job gets done or whether it doesn't get done. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, that could happen in any stage of the game. Like, I'm a teaching assistant and I get paid whether I assist the kid or whether I don't, whether I listen to the teacher or whether I don't. I get paid the same amount when I'm a therapist, and I'm going to put 60 minutes in a week and I get paid the same amount whether the kid makes progress or the kid doesn't make progress. There has to be a greater incentive than the money that you make. There has to be this internal drive that you want to help the world be a better place. You want the kids be a better place. You want there to be medium lids. You want there to be people to have a good experience, and you feel some ownership for it. And I don't know, it's been on my mind lately. So what do you think?
I mean, I agree. I think that nobody gets into our profession because of the money, right? Like, we all work to make money, but I think that we all have this drive to help people. And I think that is something that you might lose sight of, right? Because sometimes helping people is hard and it takes a lot of emotional energy to help people all day long. But I think that it's so important to circle back to the why of what we're doing, right? Because again, like, you just get caught in the minutia, and it just feels like, progress sometimes is slow, and parents are sometimes challenging to work with. Teams are sometimes hard to be a part of when there's a lot of disagreements. But I think that, myself personally, whenever I'm having a rough moment or day or time period in my life, I actually find that going to work and being in a session with a child is the best medicine. Because I think that when I'm in service to someone, it's not about me anymore. It's not about like the problems that are swirling around in my brain. It's like I'm in the moment, and I feel like there's so much joy that you can derive from that. And you can totally refocus your day if you have that opportunity to just kind of think more big picture and like, I'm actually helping, right? Like, what am I doing today? I'm actually helping a child and a family. And I think that circling back to that is so important in the work that we do.
Yeah, that's something that I've been struggling with lately, or just maybe struggling is a strong word, but thinking about lately is how to motivate the adults that help the kids. Do you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
I mean, what you say makes total sense to me. Like, and it totally is refreshing for me too. Like, if I am having a bad day, just go spend time with kids. They will recenter you, and they'll get you back into like, yes, I am helping people. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is why I get up in the morning, But is there a mentality from some people, and this is what I'm struggling with, is how do I get past that mentality of you get paid the same amount, so I don't have to do anything extra, not even extra. I just don't even have to do what I'm supposed to do because I'm going to get a paycheck at the end of the week no matter what, And I don't know necessarily that money is the answer. Like, you get even more money if you did a good job, or you do more money because there's medium lids. Do you know what I mean? And how much money would it take to be really incentivize somebody? So I don't really think that's it. And I wonder if there's some way to motivate people to sometimes just do their jobs, to feel it the way I feel it. Like, I feel this social responsibility to do this, and other people just don't. Any advice for me?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. I think that generally speaking, there's some people who care a ton and they go above and beyond and they spend countless hours, out like off the clock working, right? To like help kids and help families and to be better clinicians. And I think, there's of course the opposite end of the spectrum where, People just kind of show up, they clock in, and they clock right out. And they're not really putting their best foot forward. I think that my best advice to inspire team members is I think everybody likes to feel like they're doing a good job. And so even with people who could be doing a better job, when you highlight the things that they're doing right, I think that can build some momentum and some accountability too. Is like, wow, like she noticed that, this one small thing that I did, and she remarked on it and said, keep doing that. And so I think that that's a strategy that I definitely use in my practice, especially with because when we focus on the negative, right, which our brains are, hardwired to focus on what's not happening, what could be happening better, what are the problems in this situation that need to be fixed. And I think just starting from a place of everybody at some level is doing something that you could remark on positively, certainly. Even if it's just like I can see how much you're trying with this student. I know that it's sometimes challenging because they're not attending or they're not consistent or whatever it might be. I think just recognizing too that the struggles sometimes with kids. Like I realize that sometimes, they're absent a lot. And so you don't have the chance to make a lot of progress. And it feels like you're starting from square one. And so I think that you can have those conversations openly with communication partners, especially in a school setting, just talking openly with them and trying to highlight some of the good, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I'm really taking away from your comments there is the idea that the rising tide raises all ships. So if you are really talking about how the good work that's happening in here for this person and this person, then it might motivate other people to elevate, and then picking out the positives for those individual people that will also elevate them and keep them going and want to. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
I think that we all need to see that progress is happening. And even though it might be slow, I always say celebrate the small wins. And I think that you can do that with teams by showing them, right? Like taking a short video and saying, like, look what they did in our session. We've been working on this. And look, they finally said open. I'm saying that just because I was just working with a kid and that's exactly what he just said, which was super exciting because I feel like we've been working on it forever. And he finally, I was about to open the bag to the toys. And I just paused and he goes, open. And I'm like, yay. But what I did was I didn't keep that excitement to myself. I shared that with everybody I saw at that school. I was like, oh my gosh, he said open. Did you see it? He said open. Let me show you. I have it on video. He said open, and I think sharing that gets momentum, right? It shows that change is possible. And when you're excited about the progress that a child's making, I feel like that excitement can be contagious.
So yeah, I think that's one whole part of it is, like you said, your excitement, your emotional state, right? But something else you said there is that you made it visual. I'm going to show you this movie. I'm going to show you this quick video. And I can also see that number wise. Like I could totally see, and we've done this in the past, is to chart it out so you can actually see the growth on a graph, and that can motivate people to continue to put in what they're supposed to do, give that effort because they can see the fruit of their labor.
Yeah. And I think it's also just, especially when we're thinking about the school setting, it shows the value of being able to push into the classroom and see what's already happening, see the already established routines that can very easily be, immersed with language opportunities. We don't need to create extra work for teachers, especially. They have tons of work on their plate already. And I think that if we can figure out ways to streamline success by saying, okay, you're already lining up for some gen ed time, you can model the word go before you leave the classroom. Right? Like that's something, just focus on that for this week. Every time you go to the door, just say, model the word go, have everybody do it. And then you march on to the next classroom. I think that when we can set up routines that are already happening and we can set up language opportunities, that's where you can really see, small efforts over time add up to big change.
Well, this is really helpful for me, because like I said, I've been struggling with the medium lit analogy for a while here, and the people that kind of adopt that philosophy for their work life. One, hopefully, if you're listening, listeners, you're not that person. Or maybe two, if you're listening, you're like, yeah, I know that person, and hopefully some of these are some strategies that you can use. I know I'm going to use them to get past that.
Oh, well, I think that maybe we give a challenge to our listeners. And I know you guys might be thinking of one specific person that you're like, oh, man, I wish they were doing X, Y, and Z. So I would challenge you
Tag
guys
them in
to
Instagram and
call them out.
That's not, yeah, call them out, berate them. No, I don't think that's
not a good idea. Just kidding. That was a joke in case anybody thinks that we're actually being serious.
Yes.
No, but I would challenge you guys to go to that person and just focus on the good, right? Focus on something that they're doing well, point it out to them. And it's like kind of like focusing on what they're doing well and then giving a suggestion for something that they could do, the next day to help facilitate language even more.
That's great advice. Great advice. So something else to make it visual. I know that I've been peeking in to the Patreon to see how many other people have been joining Patreon. So drum roll, what's our number, Rachel?
I'm really excited, Chris. We now have 73 Patreon members. So
wow,
we've grown significantly.
That's awesome. That's how we're close to 100.
I know. Imagine when we get to 100 and then 200 and then the sky's the limit.
And we've been posting stuff over there at a pace of usually 2 items a week. We've set a goal to post at least one piece of bonus content each week, but we've had quite a bit recently, so we've been posting sometimes 2. Like for instance, you posted something. What did you post? Something about a sibling thing, right?
Yeah, so I actually have been using this amazing resource that we created as part of an AAC coaching bundle it's a free download on my website. But within that is this core word tracking sheet for siblings. So it's called kid-friendly core word tracking. And essentially, it's a way to incorporate siblings into modeling. And I've been, pulling it up during my telepractice sessions, and I've been working with siblings and figuring out, okay, what words are you going to use? How many times do you think you can model that in a week? And it's a way to kind of keep siblings accountable for the modeling that they're doing, and we're setting goals together. And so it's been a really fun thing that I've been using in my practice. And so I thought I'll share it with my Patreon members. And everyone's given me a lot of amazing feedback. I've gotten emails and messages and comments about how useful it's been. So I'm really excited that I was able to share that this week.
So head on over to patreon.com/talkingwithtech, and you can see for yourself what are some of the different items that are available if you sign up as a Patreon member. And we just appreciate your support. Thank you. Who are some of the new people?
So we have Meredith, Ariella, who was a longtime Patreon user, Jessica, Emily, and my good friend Steve, who is an occupational therapist. I have to give him a shout out. He's been listening to our podcast as a way to support his practice. And I'm really excited because, of course, we have a lot of SLPs listening, but we also have an occupational therapist in New Jersey who happens to be a dear friend of mine. He's listening as well. So thank you, Steve, for becoming a Patreon member.
Okay, so what else do we have to talk about? Who is the interview today?
So we interviewed Caitlyn Calder. She is an amazing mom that we connected with. I just loved this interview. It's actually 2 parts because we connected so well and we had so much fun that we ended up recording, I think, well over an hour. And she brings it in a real way. She's a parent of a child with complex communication needs. She's now, I think she's a CFY. So she's a speech language pathologist herself now. And she just talks very openly and honestly about her experience as a parent, all the struggles that she had incorporating AAC into their daily routine. She shares some hilarious anecdotes of her experience with her daughter. And I'm really excited for everyone to hear this interview. It's 2 parts. So this week, and then we'll air the second part of the episode next week.
Well, I can't wait to listen to your interview with Caitlyn Calder.
Do you feel like you spend all of your time writing assessment reports? We know that one of the hardest things about assessments is the time it takes to write up the report. That's why we've partnered with Double Time Docs, an online software that can help you write your speech and language reports faster. You simply answer multiple choice questions, fill in the blanks and short answers, and a fully written report is generated automatically.
It may seem like magic, and in a way, it is. Sophisticated technology generates paragraphs and scoring charts, speeding up your report writing dramatically. And they've even built out an AAC portion that focuses specifically on AAC device trialing and selection.
But don't take our word for it. You can check out the reviews on their website, doubletimedocs.com, by clicking on the Capterra link. Join thousands of therapists and save hours of time writing your evaluation reports with Double Time Docs.
Just go to doubletimedocs.com to sign up for a free 30-day trial to try it out for yourself. Don't forget to use the promo code TWT2020 to get one free doc credit. That's TWT2020. Check them out at doubletimedocs.com.
Welcome to Talking with Tech. I'm your host, Rachel Madel, joined today by Caitlyn Calder. Caitlyn, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. I'm so excited. Caitlyn, you're a parent and you're also in graduate school for speech language pathology, correct?
I finished grad school in May.
Ooh, congratulations.
Yes. And now I'm in my CF.
Oh, so you're CFY. Okay. So I love that you are a listener of the podcast and you have a very unique experience because you have a daughter with complex communication needs, correct?
I do.
Okay. So let's dive right in. Tell me all about your daughter. And I'd love to know kind of the journey that you guys went on because I know there were a lot of things that happened. So I'm going to let you just dive right in and tell us the story.
Okay. So she's my second child. Her name's Della. She was born. It seemed like everything was kind of okay. And then suddenly she wasn't hitting her milestones. And, you know, I have a son who's a couple years older than her. And so like, I was like, am I being paranoid? You know, and then finally I got a second opinion from a different pediatrician. If you have a gut feeling, go with the gut. And I regret that I didn't do it sooner, but that's okay. But at 8 months old, we took her to Children's Hospital of Orange County, and they helped me figure out, we narrowed it down to a genetic disease, an unknown genetic disease. And so, I mean, not to be sad, but we had a lot of medical debt and we sold our very nice house and moved to Houston where it's a little bit more affordable. But also they said, our pediatrician said, if you're going to find an answer, it's going to be at the Texas Medical Center at Baylor. They have a genetics program, and maybe when she's a young adult, you'll have some answer. So we kind of just moved out here and we didn't know anybody. We didn't have any family. We just went for it and got into the early childhood program, ECI. I can't remember what it's called everywhere else, but early childhood intervention. That's what it is. And found a geneticist and just kind of like went every year for our checkup. Della's like, she was sickly. She had RSV when she was young, she was intubated for like 3 days and then got over that. But she just was like always sick, like always upper respiratory sick, ear infection. She had PE tubes and then adenoids, tonsils,
all the things.
Yes. It was gross. And I'm like, I think it's because like, you know, you think of special education classrooms and I'm just picturing her licking like every doorknob, like anything that people touch, like she is licking it.
Yeah.
You know?
And like all the kids are licking it.
Oh, yes. And they love each other so much, but please, no licking. So
I know.
Anyway, yeah, our geneticist was like, okay, maybe when she's a teenager, you know, things are really speeding up with genetics. And then we went and it was like, maybe when she's 12. And I think she was like 5 or 6 at the time. And then they called us when she was 8 to be part of a pilot program to have her whole entire genome sequenced. Mm-hmm. And of course, we said yes. And 6 months later, they called us and they said, oh, we found something, but you got to come into the office. So we go in, they're like, okay, we found something on the ASXL3 gene. And, you know, great, it's so exciting, but also we don't know what it does. And also the guy who discovered it works here in this office. And so it was like, of all the billions of people in this world, like we walked into this dude's office.
Yeah.
And it's Dr. Bainbridge. It's now called Bainbridge-Roper syndrome. We were a part of the first study, which was super exciting, but also like, hey, great.
Exactly.
This is what my kid has. We don't know what it means.
Pioneering a new frontier.
It was a lot. So Dr. Bainbridge called me up like a year later and he's like, hey, there's starting to be more people diagnosed. Would you be willing to be kind of a point person for parents? And so I did that. And it was really surreal to talk to other people about what their child was doing. So now we have about 250 families diagnosed all over the world. And it's also been recently linked as a possible genetic cause for autism.
Wow.
So suddenly there's a lot of funding in autism right now. And so it was kind of this unknown ASXL3, like what the heck is that, to, okay, this might be connected to autism. And probably 50 to 75% of the kids have an ASD diagnosis. And the ones who don't have a lot of hallmarks, but are missing maybe one or two of those real, DSM qualifications. And about 50% are on a PEG tube, a feeding tube. And I think there's maybe 5 verbal children. It's very, very low. Most of the children don't talk. So that's how we got that answer, which was super exciting, but also like, we still don't really know what it means. Like, I don't know the lifespan. I have no idea. We're just trying to like throw this information together on Facebook and figure it out. But we've gotten some funding, and we're starting research, and that's really, really exciting.
Well, what's so interesting, because I've actually heard this story a few times, not often, but a few times, where it's a very rare genetic syndrome or disorder. There's this genetic, mutation. And what's so fascinating to me is that we now live in a world where we're so connected and able to be connected so easily that these families are finding each other from all around the world. And I have to imagine that there's some type of solace in being able to talk with another parent who has another child who's very similar presentation style to your own, because we all want to feel like we're understood and that we can relate to one another, and to have somebody be able to relate to our own experience with our own child. I'm sure that is a lot. It means a lot.
It felt like, I kind of found my tribe, and even though all the kids are different nationalities and races and creeds, like they look related. And it's like, we were part of the autism community, but also not. Like,
right.
My kid also does this, or my kid also has that. And it just wasn't quite, we didn't fit it 100%. I mean, what child does, but really, so to find other families has been so great, to finally be like, my kid does that too. Or to give like people with newborns who've been diagnosed, like, hey, this is what you're going to want to jump into,
Right.
This is what you're going to see, and this is how it'll present, and here's what you can do beforehand. And I don't know, it has been very cathartic. Hard sometimes, you're talking to people who are really sad at that moment, but it's also, it really gives purpose, meaning to what has happened to my child.
And also, I can imagine for a family who's newly diagnosed, being able to give hope to that family, right? Because in the initial stages of a diagnosis, there's a lot of grief and mourning and confusion and a lot of emotions. Yep. And to be able to say, like, I know how you're feeling right now because I was there, and it gets better. We did a lot of things, and we know a lot now, and it will get better.
Yes. And it's still disappointing. They always ask me the same things. Number one, how long was my child's going to live? Yeah. And we don't really know, but we have some older kids, and we're slowly, maybe they have a normal lifespan. But the second thing is always, is my child going to talk? Yeah. And it's hard. I'm honest and be like, chances are no, but we do have a couple that do speak. And then I can just go into the AAC part. But these kids, the receptive language is so much higher than their expressive language, and they're in there, and all of those kinds of, just trying to make people feel a little less sad. I can't control them, I can't control their emotions, but you don't want to just leave people hanging either. It's hard.
Right. And, like you said, really high receptive language, obviously low expressive language, but that's a perfect candidate for a device. So a child who is understanding so much but has no way to communicate that. So I know the sell for AAC all too well, and it's not always easy.
It is
but when there's high receptive language, I can't contain my enthusiasm, because these are the kids that make really rapid progress if you set them up with the right system, with highly motivating opportunities to learn language, when you get strategic about a vocabulary approach. So it's like, those are the kids that, like, I love working with.
Because,
they can make really quick gains.
And I want to be like, see, I told you.
Exactly. See? And I think it's just too, for parents, wrapping their head around this idea that they might not hear their child talk. I think that that's another grieving process that is not easy. And especially because I always feel like it's like this no man's land, because I think that it's one thing to say and know with certainty your child will never talk, but it's okay because we'll do this other thing with this device and you'll eventually learn what they have to say and you'll be able to connect with them. Mm-hmm. But we can never say that with certainty, right? Nor would we want to, because we don't know what will happen. But I think what happens then is that we're in this like no man's land where we can't give up, this idea of spoken language and spoken communication. But we're kind of stuck, and, we can't kind of grieve that fully. So I just feel like it's just an unfortunate reality because we don't know what's going to happen. And I would never want to tell a parent like your child will never talk, because I've seen the most amazing miracles happen where a child starts using a device and then they start verbally communicating.
But we also know the bell curve.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, we're mostly in the middle. So
yes, I agree.
It's like an asterisk. I always try to, I don't know, it's a fine line, right? You don't want to like kill people's dreams and about and the future that they had hoped for their child, but kind of honestly, that child's not really going to have the future that they exactly thought. But I find the parents that haven't talked to their kid, like can't communicate with their child for like 3 years, are much more willing to try AAC. Yes. Versus someone who has a newborn or a 1-year-old, and it's like they're just a little bit behind. It's so hard in the beginning. They're just a little bit behind their peers, and so I get that too. And I can't sit here and judge, what's right or wrong for anybody. So
it actually, most people who come to me know me for AAC, and they already know they want AAC when they come through the door. So it's like, I feel quite fortunate in that respect, because I'm not like trying to sell people on this process. Yes. Now, I will say people come to me for AAC, but they're still kind of like apprehensive. Like, I don't know, is this going to stop them from talking? They have a lot of apprehension. A few months ago, I actually did a consult with a colleague of mine who does a lot of work in early intervention. And we were working with a child who just turned 3, and she tried everything, signs, all the things, and was like, I really think this child needs AAC, which is a hard call, because I feel like a lot of early intervention clinicians feel hesitant to talk with parents about AAC. Yeah. And like you said, it's one thing for a child to be, a little bit behind, because then it's kind of like, well, they're going to catch up soon. They're not that behind, it's not, the gap is not that large. But what happens is, as the gap gets larger and larger, and parents are more interested in AAC because they're getting further away from what's developmentally appropriate, we're losing precious time.
I know.
Teaching language. So it's just like, how can we somehow fuse these two in a way that we, start presenting even low-tech AAC options and visual supports to help a child continue to learn language as speech is catching up, or maybe it won't ever catch up, but we need to be teaching language all along.
Right. And if kids can pick up baby signs at 10 months, why not, work with that? I mean, it's like,
exactly, something
they can do some kind of matching, or exchange this for this. I want a drink, or I don't know. My kid always wanted to turn on and off the lights. Like
core words.
Get it? You're absolutely right. So maybe we should just teach all babies AAC. I mean, they all have an iPad in their hand. I mean, come on.
It's true. It's true. I mean, honestly, I love a quote, Ramsky and Sevcik, I think, Sevcik. I don't know how to pronounce that last name, but it says AAC is not a last resort intervention. It's not like, it should not be, we tried, verbal, didn't work. We tried sign, didn't work. Now I guess we have to try AAC. It doesn't have to be that. It's not an either or approach. It can be simultaneously.
I know.
We know this, Caitlyn.
I don't have the answer. Like, I want to just make a t-shirt that just says AAC will not keep your child from talking.
I know.
Please get over it.
I would buy that t-shirt and wear it to work every day.
Put it on my bumper sticker or something. I don't know. Because I don't know how else to do that.
Yeah. I know it's a tough one. It's a tough one. So I love, love, love that you're helping parents, especially newly diagnosed parents. You just presented, and I want to talk a little bit about your presentation. You were nice enough to send me the handout, which I absolutely loved because there was a lot of really valuable stuff in here. And I wanted to kind of go through some of it with you.
I feel like though you guys have touched on almost every single thing that I have said.
Yes, but it's so much different coming from a parent perspective. So okay. I want to go through it a little bit. The name of your talk was True Confessions of an AAC Parent, which I absolutely loved because you got real. You got real in this presentation.
I totally did. And I said things that I had never even spoken out loud ever, except for the first time when I presented it. And it was like half mortifying, but then I didn't die. Like nothing happened. I said these things and then nothing happened. So I was like, oh, all right, I'm just going to keep going.
So the first thing that you talked about was just your expectations versus reality. So you can just speak to that a little bit.
I think, it's like, we've all seen the Miracle Worker, right? Like we've all, or read this story about Helen Keller and Annie Sullivan. And we all know it took Annie Sullivan a really, 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 really long time to teach Helen Keller. Yet when it comes to like applying it to myself, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get her this device and she's going to be like, Mommy, I love you. You're so wonderful. Thank you for always sacrificing and putting your needs last. I was like, this is going to be so awesome. And then like, it totally did not turn out that way. And so my slides, I have like this mother and daughter together and they're having this, communication moment. And then the next slide is her smash device. Like she smashed it. And it was like, this is how it goes, And so I mistook a lot of those expectations of what I thought it was going to be like. And instead of understanding that it was a normal process, I thought I'm doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. This isn't working. Mm-hmm. And when really I didn't understand how complex it is to learn language, period, on top of a way that most of us don't really communicate. We use speech, and this is not speech.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, did you think that, because I completely agree. I think there's very unrealistic expectations sometimes that parents have and teachers have and even clinicians have. And I think that it's important to set realistic expectations. Do you feel like the speech language pathologist or the AAC specialist that you worked with set those realistic expectations? And you just were kind of like, I hear what you're saying, but like my kid's different.
I don't know. I honestly don't, because I'm sure they told me so many wonderful things, but it's like, I can only take in so much. And I have so many other things that I was dealing with her. And of course, communication is important, but, as an SLP, it's like, no, it is the be all end all. Like you need to do this. And it's hard to step back and be like, of course, communication's important, but it's not the only thing that's going on in these people's lives. And so I'm not sure. They were great. I still talk to all of her former SLPs, but also we started this like 10 years ago. And there wasn't.
And how old is your daughter now? She's 12? Okay.
12.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she started when she was 2 years old, which is very young.
And we went for an evaluation and she got, I get goldfish if I press this button. Great.
The effect was there.
I was like, oh my gosh, and so of course, like we immediately saved up and bought an iPad and like, we're trying to do it ourselves. And like, of course it didn't go at all. Like it went in that session.
Of course not.
Pushing buttons, looking, we've all probably experienced that, those first few sessions where it's just like, nothing's really getting through. It feels like, so there just wasn't a lot to go on, I felt like. And the iPad had just barely come out. I mean, it was like so new. And then suddenly AAC is available to like almost everybody. Like, what a freaking miracle. Like it was so just, it's a really exciting time. But I don't remember. I just remember I was supposed to use it all the time, 24 hours a day.
So that was the expectation.
I think I did it.
Yeah. So you might have put that on yourself.
Yes. And so like my daughter's device would sit on the shelf and look at me like, you're the worst. And I'd walk by it. I'd be like, I know I'm the worst. Like it just became like this huge vortex of just awful feelings and sadness and like failure and, you know, all of these things. Like that's going to make me want to use it more, right?
Exactly. You're like when you're in a shame spiral, that's when you decide to, you know, do all the things you're supposed to do.
Right. Oh, and this shame spiral has a strap so I can just take it everywhere. Awesome. I can't wait. You know? So, I mean, we had our moments where it was really great. And then we had a lot of time where it wasn't. And I didn't understand and I didn't have the language to explain to my SLP what was happening. I didn't know what questions to ask, you know? And I felt like I'm already getting a lot of judgment from people because my kid's crying on the ground or she just peed her pants on purpose because she's upset. And it's like, now I just want this SLP to think I'm like kind of a good person and I am trying. And it's a very complicated thing that SLPs are trying to do.
And I think the important thing too to remember is that as speech language pathologists, yes, we are like 100% committed to communication above all else. But parents have to be committed to communication, but they also have to be committed to medical needs and taking care of a child and making sure their child's fed and clothed and, you know, OT and PT and school and IEPs and, you know, the list goes on and on and on. So it's like as practitioners, we're all kind of like pushing our, you know, goals and our agenda and like do this at home. But you're getting that from every angle. And so I'm sure as a parent, it was overwhelming and you couldn't do it all. And you wanted to do it all, right? We have every aspiration in the world to do all the things, like go to the gym and, you know, all the things we know are good for our life, like eat healthy, go to the gym, you know, read self-help, journal, gratitude, you know, all these things that we want to do, but we can't possibly do it all. And so it's like, how can
no one can.
No one can.
Yeah. No one can.
And I think it's important too, like we go through peaks and valleys. I was just talking to a colleague and it was really cool because she went to a training. It was a Head Start training I think it was in Sacramento a few months ago. But what was really interesting is that they're learning from research that people go through motivation cycles. So motivation kind of goes up and then it goes down and it goes up. And so if we think about motivation for all people, kids, adults, everyone, as going through cycles, we're a lot kinder to ourselves because we don't have to think about like this idea, this unrealistic idea that I'm going to be motivated and I'm supposed to be motivated all the time.
That's true. Who has the energy for that?
Nobody. And so it was like, and was talking about like around the holidays, around this time, like everyone's motivation starts like going down low.
That's what I thought. I'm like, yeah, everyone's motivated, you know, so ride that wave.
Exactly. And same thing in the summer, like motivation goes down as you're like going on vacation and it's a natural cycle, right? Instead of it being this terrible thing where we're like, I didn't use the device all summer. Like I feel so bad, you know, just understanding what to expect and realizing this is a natural process that human beings go through. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, that makes me feel relieved. And I think definitely I should consider adding that to my presentation because we're all hard on ourselves, all of us, and especially women. I'm not discounting dads or men, but we are especially hard on ourselves and have a hard time forgiving the natural weaknesses that we have. And so it's just one more thing. And I didn't, you know, I know there are women and men who lay in bed at night and think of all the things they should have done. And I had this awesome therapist who was like, Caitlyn, you need to stop shoulding all over yourself.
I love it.
And it was like, permission, you know, and that really changed my perspective on how to deal with all of the demands that we have, whether or not people have a special needs child or not. That it's like a relief to know that no one can keep that energy up forever, you know?
No. And it's interesting if you think about all of the years of your life, you know, you go through certain peaks where you're like, wow, I was so motivated to do this thing and this goal. And like, I couldn't believe that every morning I jumped out of bed and I did those things, you know, and then you go through these other periods of your life where like, wow, I was literally like in survival mode and I didn't do anything but survive.
Water. Yep. Yes. I felt like that for like 8 years. So it's much better now. But when you don't have the tools to deal with that, it feels like you're treading water every day. And it's sad because I know so many people are living that.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, knowing kind of what you know now, and especially with your background now in speech language pathology, what are some ways that clinicians can help ease the overwhelm? Because I
Okay.
think that there's a lot, like I know myself as a clinician who works with a lot of new families and introduces them to AAC. I'm just so excited. And I'm like, and do this, and you can do this, and look at this, and try this. So what's some like strategies that you can give that can help parents not be so overwhelmed?
Okay, so just letting them know what it's going to be like. Like, hey,
Mhm.
this is not, it's going to feel super weird to
Mhm.
talk to your kid with an iPad or device because we are used to using speech. So if it doesn't feel natural, like that's okay. You're totally
Yeah.
fine. Just keep on going. And
Mhm.
setting the expectation of this is a super complicated process. Like it's
Mhm.
so complicated learning language. It's not easy. So to think I expected my child to build full sentences because I didn't know any better,
Mhm.
so let's set those realistic expectations, and we still give a hope and leave, dangle that carrot in front of their face,
Mhm.
because it will help eventually, but like it's gonna feel weird. That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong, because I
Mhm.
thought I was totally failing at this. And then setting realistic expectations of using the device at home. And so I have some research in my presentation and setting realistic goals. So setting a time and you read this book and then you press the characters on the device or the picture, whatever they're doing, or spending 10 minutes a day, like just 10 minutes. It seems like, okay, I could do 10 minutes,
Mhm.
setting a time. That's 70 minutes a week that you didn't have before. 70.
Mhm.
So much better than just 0. And I can tell you, like, the weeks that I didn't even use it, if I had known that just 10 minutes would have made a difference. And then the last thing is modeling. I didn't even know what that was. And now I throw around these words, but I forget that I didn't know them. Like,
Mhm.
I went to school for a really long time and I did some research in AAC and, and I forget that that's just not a natural thing that people know. And so to
Mhm.
talk about modeling and what it is and to teach people how to do it would have been really helpful to me. One of the places that we went, it didn't have, I couldn't watch my child's therapy. And so like, I don't know what's going, like, I have no idea. And she's like, oh, she did this and this and that. And I'm like, that sounds great. Like, I don't know what that means because she's not touching it at home. And I'm like, yeah,
Happy to hear it's going great in behind closed doors over there.
yeah. I was like, oh, that's great. Yeah, I've been seeing that too. No, I saw none of that. But I didn't, I didn't want to be like, look stupid, which is so dumb that I let pride get in the way. But I didn't understand what she was doing differently. And it was a lot of things she
Mhm.
was doing differently because I didn't
Yeah.
know. So being able to watch would have been helpful. And I couldn't be in the same room with Della because I could
Mhm.
for a while, but then her behavior just became too much. And so, I just stepped out, and that would have been really helpful to me, I think.
Mhm.
You can see, well, you can watch people do stuff and we all kind of pick it up, right?
Right.
But
I think that's super insightful because I completely agree. A lot of the students that I work with, behaviors start like meltdowns start happening when parents are in the room. So it's very challenging at times because, like you mentioned, it's like I think that kids have a hard time with two authority figures, like, in the same room at the same time. And they're like, well, mom tells me what to do, but like now Miss Rachel's telling me what to do. And like, I'm not going to do anything.
yeah.
And so I think that that's a real thing. But
Oh,
now we're so lucky with technology that we're able to utilize video and,
Right.
live streaming and all of these really cool things. And so I think from a parent perspective, I feel like you probably had that feeling when you hear all these great things. You're like, I want to see it. I want to, how can I see it?
Yeah.
Now empowering parents to say, is there a way that you can maybe take a short video at the end of your session and so I could just see what's happening? It's a hard balance to ask for what you need,
Right.
but also to not step on toes, right? Like I know the parents that are like, well, I can't ask for something like that because like, what if she doesn't want to do it? And what if it's, we start like telling ourselves this crazy story of how like, that's too much to ask.
Right. And I think feeling that in my daughter's like IEP meetings,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't want them to hate me not that they ever hated anybody, but you know,
Mhm.
I'm making cookies and bringing them to the yard and thinking like, catch more flies with honey. And I know she's so difficult and just be nice to her. And it's so hard to ask for what you want. And it's not true for everybody. Some people go in with an advocate and a lawyer and they have zero problem telling people under the law what they need to do. And that's great. I am not that way. And, you know, part of me feels bad that maybe my daughter should have been born to someone who is a little more aggressive, but, you know, I still knew what she needed. It was just really hard for me to sit at a table with like 12 other people who clearly knew what they're talking about. And I'm like, I don't know. She just cries a lot. And I don't know why she pees her pants all the time. It's because she's mad. I don't know. You know, it's really intimidating. And so I wish there would be some kind of like paradigm shift where we could spend just as much time, maybe even every other session, not even working with the child directly, but working with the parents. And I think that research is really starting to shift to looking at the facilitator. And that's who I'm very, very interested in terms of research. And I feel like if we could give people tools, take the SLP and the child relationship out of it.
Well, what's interesting about you saying that, Caitlyn, is that my practice has shifted a little bit. And this isn't happening with all of the families that I work with, but I have certain families that I work with where I see the child, but some sessions, an entire hour is spent with just parents.
Yes.
Just me and mom, or me and dad, or me and mom and dad. And I sit down and because sometimes the kids are kind of, I hate to say in the way, but I'm like, you know, they're like, they need attention and they're kind of doing all crazy things. And I'm like, I need one-on-one time with the family to be like, how's it really going?
Right.
And like, that's the question I asked. How's it really going?
And then I'm like, I don't know if I would have told you the truth. I don't know. So maybe you have this, a more like sense of what is really going on now, and that you can say that and kind of say, you know, it's really hard to implement, or it feels really awkward, and that's okay. So are you having any of those experiences? You know, to kind of give them permission to say, oh my gosh, it's not working at all.
Well, you know what I do, especially for so some families I see monthly. And so I'll come in and I'll say, you know, how's it been going? And oftentimes I'll get a look, a very subtle, like I can tell there's like guilt. And I'm like, ooh, now I can sense it from like a mile away.
Yeah.
And then it tells me they haven't been using the device. They're feeling really bad about not using it. And so then I can kind of like back my way into the conversation in a way that's like, listen, I don't care. And I say this to families. I'm like, I don't care if you haven't picked up the device since the last time I saw you a month ago.
Right.
We need to figure out a way that's realistic for your family. Just start small and start weaving it in.
Right.
And I'm like, there's no judgment here. I'm like, and I tell parents, I know you have a lot on your plate. You have this, and this. I know, because it's so hard to even schedule this session, you know? And so I get it. And I'm like, there's no reason to feel guilty or like you're a bad parent and all the things. Like, let's just like push that to the side. It's not helping us or serving us. And I'm not doing that at all. Yes. I'm thinking, you know, whatever I did last month wasn't effective because it wasn't able to be implemented into your routine. Right. So that's on me. Like now I'm like, I'm here to figure out, you know, this month what I can suggest that makes sense with your routine and your family that you're actually going to feel you're able to do.
There's so much power. You're validating, right? You're validating their feelings. Like, this is hard.
Exactly. And the onus is on me. It's not like do all this, parents. It's like, how can I present, you know, communication opportunities or vocabulary words or low tech supports or whatever it might be? How can I present this to a parent in a way where they feel like, oh, I can totally do that? And sometimes it means I print out low tech visuals on and off and we just tape it in front of the sink. Yeah. It's like, okay, every time you turn the sink on, touch on and like call it a day.
Right. Right.
You know, but that's like, okay, we can do that. We brush teeth every night, you know? Yeah. And so it's like, really, sometimes I have to work backwards and I'm like, okay, like I need to figure out a way to start integrating into already existing routines.
Right. And I think once you can get that small amount of buy-in and in a little bit of time, it starts to working, which is a natural reinforcement, which we know works a lot better than a lot of other techniques that we try.
Yes.
But to put it that way, you know, is I think it would be a burden it would have been a burden off of my shoulders. I would have felt like, oh, okay, you're in this with me. Like, you're taking responsibility for that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The onus is on you, SLP.
Please take it off my shoulders.
Right. And I think so validating is very powerful. And then, letting people know that you're with them and putting aside judgment, because God bless our families, but sometimes we get a lot of judgment, even from the people that are closest to us, because they don't understand. No one's trying to be mean, but you get it from strangers and you get it from people who mean well. And it just really makes it harder. So the last thing a parent wants is their child's SLP to be like, you are failing them, this isn't working because of you. Because I feel like a lot of parents are already pointing the finger at themselves anyway,
Exactly. And that's why it doesn't serve us. It doesn't get us any closer to our goals if we point blame, right? And guilt. We try to like change somebody's, behavior by guilt tripping them or being passive aggressive or all these things. And, it takes a lot of practice to take your ego out of it.
Yeah. Right?
Like, I need to check my ego at the door, because I could just be like, well, I told you what to do. And like, why didn't you do it? You should be modeling all the time.
Right.
Should. You should be doing all these things so that we can see the outcomes. And instead it's like, no, my ego's at the door. I have no idea what it's like to be a parent of a child with special needs. So I need to come at this with empathy and understanding and patience. And my ego, there's no place for my ego in this situation.
But on the flip side, if you're willing to do that and be vulnerable and set that, you're modeling, right? And maybe the parent would feel more likely to be like, okay, she's putting herself out there, I'm going to do it too. Like, I did let my ego get in the way, but I didn't understand that's what I was doing. And I'm so disappointed in myself that I let that happen. I didn't understand the process, but looking back, I do now. And so maybe if you're willing to say those things and make yourself vulnerable, well, it's a lot easier to be vulnerable if someone else goes first.
It's true.
So, I appreciate it.
This is part 1 of a 2-part episode. Stay tuned next week for the second half of this episode. And as always, thank you so much for listening.
Hi, I'm Mei Ling Chan.
And I'm Martin Sibley.
And we are the hosts of the Exceptional Leaders Podcast, where we spotlight high-profile topics and amazing people who are changing the worldview on disability.
Even though we are oceans apart, we are bringing people from all over the world together to discuss inclusion, advocacy, accessibility, and real-life journeys.
So listen to the Exceptional Leaders Podcast to hear the voices and stories from amazing changemakers and be inspired to make a real difference in the world.
You're listening to the Exceptional Podcast Network.